Hello and welcome to T.U.G podcast. I am so glad you are here. Now, today we're diving into a topic that so many of us face when we are starting something new, and that is doubt and insecurity. Whether it's doubting your abilities, feeling unqualified, like I have felt so many times, right? Or just being unsure of what God is calling you to. These feelings sometimes can stop us in our tracks. But here's the truth. God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 27 and 29. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. So let's unpack now how we can move from doubt to confidence by leaning on God's strength. First, I would like us to deal with recognizing doubt and insecurity. How do you recognize doubt and insecurity? Doubt often whispers, "You are not enough." It can show up as fear, procrastination, or even comparing yourself to others. But here is the good news. You are not alone. Even some of the greatest leaders in the Bible wrestled with insecurity. Take Moses, for example, in Exodus chapter 3. When God called Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses responded, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" He doubted his ability, his worth, and his qualifications, but God didn't focus on Moses' weaknesses. Instead, he said, "I will be with you," Exodus 3 verse 12. You can further read Exodus chapter 4 and see how Moses expressed his insecurities and how God dealt with that and went ahead to use him regardless. The same is true for us. God's presence and power are what qualifies us, not our abilities. If the merit was our abilities, many of us wouldn't qualify. Now, let us look at God's strength in your weakness. So, how do we overcome doubt and insecurity? The first step is to recognize that our confidence doesn't come from ourselves. It comes from God. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 says, "I can do all things through him who gives me strength." Notice, it doesn't say we can do on our own. It's God's strength working in us. Paul also writes in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Our weaknesses are not just disqualifications. They are opportunities for God to show his power. Therefore, don't let your weaknesses hold you back. Give them to God and see how he turns them into power and strength. Think about that for a moment. What if the very things you are insecure about are the things God wants to use to show his glory? Moses couldn't speak well, yet God used him to lead an entire nation. Gideon felt like the least important person in Israel, but God used him to defeat an army. You know what? God specializes in using the unlikely, and that's one of the most beautiful things about our God. Now, let us look at the 3 steps to build confidence. Let's get practical here. How can we move from insecurity to confidence in God? Number 1, renew your mind with truth. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Renew your mind by affirming to yourself that you can do it through Christ who gives you strength. And 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. God's power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, your weakness is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be proud of, because in it, God's power will rest. Replace the lies of insecurity with God's truth. And number 2, take small steps of obedience. Confidence grows as we take actions. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start where you are and trust God with the rest. Many people that God called never felt ready, but God went ahead to use them anyway. You might not feel ready, but God wants to use you. Regardless of your weaknesses and insecurity, you are the one. Number 3, pray for God's strength. Make it a habit to surrender your doubts to God in prayer. Ask Him for courage and clarity. And number 4, celebrate God's faithfulness. Reflect on times when God has worked through you in the past. Let those moments remind you of His power. Remember, confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about trusting that God is with you and that He's working through you. Now, listen. Doubt and insecurity may try to hold you back, but they don't have to define you. God's strength is greater than your weaknesses. Now, this week, I challenge you to identify an area where you feel insecure and give it to God in prayer. Then, take one small step of faith in that area. Now, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts and how you are stepping out in faith. Now, you can reach out to me in the comments section below, and do not forget to subscribe to T.U.G Podcast. Why? Because you will not miss the next episode where we will explore staying faithful amid opposition. Until then, remember, God is with you and His strength is enough. Stay faithful, stay hopeful, and keep moving forward. My name is Johnson Kibali. See you next time on T.U.G Podcast.